everybody. Welcome to another edition of Geezerology. Today, my esteemed colleague Scott is logging in from sunny Florida, and he's going to be doing a memory thing with two albums from Tom Waits, Alice and Blood Money, both of which debuted 20 years ago. So Scott's going back 2 decades to talk about these two contributions from that gravelly voiced singer. So Scott, take it away, buddy. It's all yours.
Hey, thanks, Bob. Yeah, it's 20 years ago this week, as a matter of fact, May 4th of 2002, when Tom Waits released these two albums, Alice and Blood Money, as Bob told you. These two are the 14th and the 15th studio albums of Waits's career. Yeah, it's pretty unusual for somebody to do two separate products on the same day, but this isn't the first time it happened. I know that Guns N' Roses did it back in the 80s, released two albums on one day. I know Springsteen did one day, and Elvis Costello did the same thing. So this is not unprecedented. It's just unusual. It doesn't happen very often. But both of these albums consists of songs that Waits had written for Robert Wilson plays. Wilson, he's an American playwright out of Waco, Texas, and he's a guy who cut his teeth in the avant-garde theater community in New York City in the 1970s. And then in the 80s and 90s, he found some big success staging what he calls experimental theater in Europe. Now, Waits had worked with Wilson before. Waits and William S. Burroughs, a novelist, worked with Wilson on a play called The Black Rider that was staged in Hamburg, Germany in 1990. And then Waits subsequently recorded those songs that he wrote for that play and released them as a Tom Waits album in 1993. So there was some precedent for Alice and Blood Money there. The Black Rider, the first one, it was a successful stage project. The album is not one of my favorite Tom Waits albums. In fact, it's probably on the bottom of the list. The album wasn't too good, I didn't think. But the stage project itself was a success for Wilson and for Waits and for William S. Burroughs, and that was staged at the I think they call it the Thalia Theater. I'm not sure exactly how that's pronounced, but the Thalia Theater in Hamburg. So that company who puts on the Thalia Theater, I'll call it Thalia, that company had a success with the Black Rider, so they came back to Wilson and Waits a couple of years later and commissioned another project for them, and that became a play titled Alice that premiered in 1992. And then that one also went pretty well, so the two worked together again, and a few years later, and they produced a play called Wojciech, which actually was staged in Copenhagen, Denmark in the year 2000. So coming off another couple of successes with Alice and Wojciech, Waits decided to go back to the well that he went to with the Black Rider and to take these songs that he wrote for these plays and make a couple of Tom Waits albums out of them. And those turned into the albums of Alice and Blood Money. Now these are not soundtrack albums. Waits has issued a couple of soundtrack albums in his career. He did one for the Francis Ford Coppola film, One for the Heart, the one he did with Crystal Gayle in the late 1970s. And then he also issued a soundtrack album in 1992 for a film that he worked on with Jim Jarmusch called Night on Earth. But soundtrack albums are basically the same performances that were that were staged like in the films, and just ported over to album. But Waits repurposed these songs to make a proper Tom Waits album. So they're not really they're considered a canonical Tom Waits album as opposed to a soundtrack album. They're the same songs, but they were just repurposed, rearranged, and reproduced, and just redone, resequenced, and everything like that. So anyway, most everybody knows that Tom Waits is definitely an acquired taste. He's a fairly polarizing talent. It's like if you listen to a Tom Waits album, you either love it or you hate it. There's not a whole lot of middle ground there. People don't tend to be neutral on them. I'm a big fan. I have been since the middle '70s. I was sort of a casual fan in the mid '70s with his Bones Howe albums when he did that whole Lounge Lizard thing. I was a casual fan then, but when he hooked up with Kathleen Brennan, who became his wife, and they started going off in a different direction and doing a lot more experimental work, I became a huge Tom Waits fan in the middle '80s, about the time that Rain Dogs and Frank's Wild Years came out, middle and late '80s. I'd put Waits as one of my favorite musical artists ever, right up there with Lou Reed and Peter Gabriel, for those of you who know how my tastes run. These two albums, Alice and Blood Money, in my book, these are not throwaways. They're not second-rate albums. These are solid, very good Tom Waits albums. They're not really among the very best of Tom Waits albums. I'm not going to say that. They're not in the same league as Bone Machine and Rain Dogs and albums like that. But these would be these are pretty solid. Both of them are pretty solid 3.5 and 4-star albums. They're really good. They're not groundbreaking in any sense. They're not these big, grand artistic statements. These albums are just vehicles to just listen to some fantastic Tom Waits songs and to get a sense of some of the things that he's learned as an arranger and as a record producer up to this point. He does a really good job with this. I love both of these albums. Both of them are actually hits both commercially and critically back in the day when they were released 20 years ago. But I'm a little more drawn to Alice. I like Alice a little bit better for this reason. Alice is packed with just these beautiful Tom Waits style ballads and love songs, with a couple or three of his signature sort of story songs thrown into the mix there. And this is probably the best collection of just heartfelt, sweet love songs that Waits probably made in his post '70s career. These songs are kind of a revisit to the kind of stuff that he did used to do back in the '70s, but they're now filtered through the latter day Tom Waits filter. With just different kinds of instrumentation and odd production values and things like that. The songs in Blood Money are much more chaotic and dangerous. I love that side of Tom Waits too, but the stuff that's in Blood Money, you can kind of find that version of Tom Waits in a few different albums that he made in the late 20th century and into the early 21st century, where Alice is fairly rare, just because he kind of revisits his balladeering days of the 1970s with that one, and he does it very well. The songs on Alice were written about 30 years ago, as I said, back in 1992. for the play Alice. And this play, it was a story about author Lewis Carroll's obsession with a young girl named Alice Liddell. Now, Lewis Carroll was a pen name for a guy named Charles Dodson, who was a 30-something clergyman at Christ Church College in Oxford in the mid-1860s. Alice was the preteen daughter of one of the college's deans, and Dodson, he was also a photography buff, and young Alice became his favorite photography model. And Dodson just fell in love with her. I mean, there's a little bit of creepiness and pedophilia going on here, right? But anyway, while he was shooting photographs of her, he would tell Alice just these fantastical stories to keep her entertained while he was doing his photo sessions. And then he eventually turned those stories into a couple of novels featuring Alice as a central character. And these novels, of course, were Alice in Wonderland, which was published in 1865, when Dodson was 33 and Alice was 13. And then Through the Looking Glass appeared 6 years later. So anyway, fast forward back to 1992, and Wilson and Waits got together to put on this opera. And I did find on YouTube what appears to be a documentary on their creation of the play. I couldn't find any info as to the origins of this video, but I'm going to have the control room run a little clip to give you a sense of what this is all about. This is a clip of Waits demoing the title song, Alice, and next to a preview of how it appeared on stage. And it'll give you a little sense of the context of what's going on here. Silhouette crows, I saw in the tears on my face, and the skeets on the pond, they spilled Alice.
And I must be insane to go skating on your name, and by tracing it twice, I fell through the eyes of Alice.
That happened in Hamburg in November and December 1992. So I don't know what Waits's plans were for at this time, whether he even had a plan to do these as an album or something like that. But just right after Waits returned home to Southern California in probably like in early 1993 or something, but he had demo tapes of these songs that he had recorded to show to Wilson and to use in a play and everything. And somebody broke in his car and stole these demo tapes. So for several years, eventually a couple of bootleg albums with these demo tapes of these songs of Alice started circulating, and these things circulated for several years before Waits decided to go into the studio, about 9 or 10 years later, to record these songs and do an album about them. I don't know why that decision was made, whether he decided to just go ahead and double up and do these two albums together or whatever. We're not sure. But anyway, it was a good 10 years after this play was staged when he did this album. But there are some beautiful, beautiful songs on this album. The title song Alice it kicks off the album. It opens the album, and it just sucks you right into this thing. There are a few beauties here called Flower's Grave, a song called No One Knows I'm Gone, Lost in the Harbor, I'm Still Here, Fish and Bird, Barcarolle. I mean, these are just some beautiful, heartwarming tunes from Tom Waits. Of course, it's all filtered through the Tom Waits aesthetic. That his idea is that you find you get the most satisfyingly beautiful things if you start digging through all the ugliness, right? So it's like more often than not, White's post 1970s ballads sound like they're being played by a half-drunk Salvation Army band on a downtown street corner. If you listen to these, I mean, you know, there's some real strain in White's voice, piano and horns and calliopes and accordions and you know, oil drums that he bangs on and stuff like that. But you know, whatever other instruments appear in this mix, I mean, there always seem to be just slightly off key, and everybody's timing is a little off sometimes. You know, there's missed cues, and you know, for instruments and things like that. But it's all intentional. It's just all part of Waits' playbook. It's, you know, it's a whole, like I say, it's a whole. There's the beauty and ugliness. And this stuff is just wonderful when it comes to that. Among the other songs on this are 3 songs right in the middle that come back to back that are highlights of this album, I think. One is called I'm gonna take a second to get this in my head to pronounce this correctly. Kamenisu Spade. That's one long word. And this song is Waits just chanting gibberish on top of this wild percussion and woodwinds jam. It's just a fascinating song. And then he follows that up with a couple of his famous character studies. One of them is called Poor Edward, which is this nightmare of a song that tells a story of Edward Mordache, who was an urban legend back in Victorian times. We don't know if this person actually existed or not. But anyway, Edward Mordache was the guy. He was born with a second face on the back of his head, according to this urban legend. And this face would talk to Edward at night. And Edward tried to, you know, he wanted doctors to remove this face from the back of his head. And the doctor said, no, we can't do that. You know, it'd kill you. You can't do that. So Edward got to a point when he was about 23 years old where he just couldn't take it anymore. And he committed suicide. And that's what that song is about, Poor Edward. The next song, Tabletop Joe, a little more optimistic song. This one celebrates the life of a man without a body who overcomes his handicap to become a rich and famous piano player at Coney Island. You know, it's just one of these classic Tom Waits stories that you know, you got to hear it to believe it. Just great stuff. You know, this is definitely a Tom Waits album. There's no mistaking that. Great album. You should go listen to it. Blood Money, again. Blood Money is it's the other side of Tom Waits, and I can understand why he did just do this as a double album, because I mean they're both songs. You know, there's a relationship here. They're both songs that he wrote for plays that he put out, but I guess he made the decision that they were different enough, and there's enough of they have their own separate identities, so it'd be better probably just to send them out as 2 separate products instead of just one double album. Blood Money come from the Wilsons, as I said, the 2000 play Wojciech, and this is a play about a 19th century German soldier who was a subject of human experimentation, and he begins suffering hallucinations, and eventually, because of his madness, he stabs his wife to death. You know, a story that obviously is right up Tom Waits' alley, right? Here's I'll give you a look at what this play looked like. This is a clip that I'm about to show you that comes from a promotional trailer from the play. And this is the lead actor singing "Misery is the River of the World," which turns out to be the lead track on the Blood Money album.
There's a one-eyed man in the poker pit, digging up the dirt with a shovel and a pick. The sun went down, the moon went blood,
Okay, anyway, so where Alice was Waits's version of Sweet and Optimistic, Blood Money is pretty much just all psychosis and nightmares. Uh, there's some sweetness in Blood Money. There's a track, Coney Island Baby, and a track called Lullaby. These could have fit nicely in with those gems from Alice. But here is, I mean, those heartwarming songs are just there to set you up for this hell and paranoia that is in songs that, you know, let me just give you the titles of 3 or 4 of these songs and you'll understand. They'll give you an idea of where these songs are coming from. As I said, Misery is the River of the World is the opening track of the album. There's a track called God's Away on Business. There's a track called Starving in the Belly of a Whale. You know, you don't need to stretch your imagination too much to get an idea of what these songs might be.
Taking up the tape with the shovel and the pick. It's a job. It's a job. Money mood rising with the plague and the fun. Join the mob. Join the mob. It's all over. It's all over. It's all over. And there's a leak in the boiler room. The poor, the lame, the blind. Who are the ones that we kept in charge? Killers, thieves, and lawyers. God's away, God's away, God's away on business, business.
It's great stuff if you're into this kind of thing. I'm definitely into this kind of thing. If you are, you should definitely check out one or both of these albums. They're both great Tom Waits albums. It's just as I said, Alice. You know, if you're going to pick one over the other, I'm going to recommend Alice over Blood Money. But actually, I would recommend that you listen to both of these things. Yeah, Alice would be your first choice if you want some heartwarming balladeering. If you're looking for some claustrophobia and some hellscapes and everything like that, go check out Blood Money. Just be warned, neither of these albums are for the squeamish, and I'm sure Bob can attest to that. I know that Bob is not a Tom Waits fan. I know he's attempted it, but he's never warmed up to it, as they say. Bob, any questions?
Well, not necessarily a question. Well, yeah, I am going to have a question. A couple of comments. I remember back in the days when you and I were young and were college and roommates and such, and how I got exposed to Tom Waits, and think you even dragged me to a Tom Waits movie. I've always recognized Waits' songwriting ability. The guy is an incredible songwriter. I struggle with his I struggle with his performances. But there was one album that you suggested I listen to that if I remember correctly, I really liked. Do you remember which one that was?
We did a video on this, one of our earliest videos. Right. That was Heart Attack and Vine. That was his last album with Bones Howe and in his Asylum years before he left Bones Howe and Asylum and hooked up with Kathleen Brennan, who's become his lifelong collaborator. Yeah.
So I'll just say to our viewers, if you appreciate intelligent songwriting, you can't get much better than Tom Waits. And if you can handle his delivery, there's some great material there. So I do agree with you on that part.
Yeah, he's a master at two different things there, and at songwriting, he's just an exception. Bob said Bob's correct. He's one of the best songwriters of his generation. You know, he's right up there with the best of them. And he's become he's become a hell of an experimental sort of out there avant-garde musician, and he's learned very well how to combine those two talents to just make some excellent material. Check out some Tom Waits. I'm a huge fan, and it's like nothing you've ever heard or seen before. If you look at his videos, if you look at his appearances on the talk shows, which are all over YouTube, listen to some of his albums. You don't get this stuff anywhere else. Nobody else gives you this kind of stuff.
Yeah, in a world of auto tune, Tom Waits is certainly unique. And I remember
there's not any auto tune happening here. This is anti auto tune.
And I mean, two parting shots from me. I remember when I was listening to Heart Attack and Vine, some of those songs on there, man, they were just like 3 or 3.5 minute hard-boiled noir mysteries. I mean, they're just, God, he just paints such incredible evocative word pictures. And then, I mean, what can you expect from a guy who did a Christmas Card from a Hooker in Milwaukee or Minneapolis or whatever that city was?
Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis. One of the greatest ballads that anybody's ever written.
Yes, I mean, it's just, So I, if the guy had a different delivery, I would probably own everything he's got, because the songs are just incredible. So anyway, that's my take. And Scott, we thank you very, very much for your remembrances on these two albums. And thank you for listening. And be sure to check out the other stuff we have on YouTube under Geezerology. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.